Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mendham and such, so forth and whatnot. Alright, I'll start with just a rag on corporations and all that kind of crap. PayPal, annoying. I've been using it for years, really is semi-functional. I'd say we're way overcharged. The simple idea of putting money in a bank and being able to transfer it from one place to another should be free and easy. We really shouldn't be charged for any of it. So it doesn't cost anything. It's all done with computers, really not an issue, and such. So anyway, I have, I'm not going into my personal stuff, but just issues, and so I wanted to make some changes in my bank account, and therefore I have to change what the donation button links to and blah blah blah. And PayPal is just such an asshole. I mean, just about how, they said there was some sort of security issue when it's the same phone numbers for 30 years and the same email address. Only one device ever contacts the account, and then they put you on hold for 50 minutes and go through this whole rigmarole, and then they tell you have to call back to authorize who you are. And you're like, what are you talking about? I have to call back. I have to go through 50 minutes of a... Well, anyway, just too stupid. And you tell the employee, you're really just being too stupid. And then you talk to a supervisor, and they're just as stupid. And you're just like, it can't be this stupid. I mean, if I technically could steal somebody's email, then I could, and I have their PayPal password, well, yeah, then I can steal all their money. So if I already have those two things, why should there ever be an issue? I mean, I already own the account, right? I mean, I've already killed it. It's mine, And, like, email is pretty secure, so it's just nonsense. I mean, they're just stupid. And so they jump you through these stupid hoops, and it's just stupid. So, like I said, I wish I could give the details. I really should record every conversation. I used to. I just got to record them because they're too stupid. But anyway, so I just thought I'd throw it in there just as a gesture of returning the good deed. I just figure I'll put PayPal sucks in the title just for fun. And so everybody just bring up other things, in the comment section. Just fill it full of alternatives to PayPal, because PayPal is suck. All the others probably suck too, because this is the kind of thing we, the people, should own. We, the people, should be able to handle having some sort of like public library style banking system where we put the money in. You don't even need interest anymore, right? So nobody needs interest on their whatever PayPal account, and all you just need to do is be able to transfer the money from one legitimate user to another, period. Not complicated. Alright, anyway, just so frickin' annoying. Yes, that's enough. So I figure, as I have pointed out, it is worth pointing out again, the fake Sagan. I was listening to Bridge Over Troubled Water. Sad song. His Troubled Waters, and so I figure I'll play his video and rag on it as a gesture of friendliness, just as a, you wouldn't want to treat him like a cripple or something. But anyway, it just sucks. But yeah, we do so fundamentally disagree, and it's just it's so disappointing, because I'm seeing this in my conversations on physics, that all these people really do want to bend the science to validate the human experiment, and to create some sort of god that isn't really a god. And it's so depressing, because it's just religion. They really do have humans apparently have some need, to create a parent of some kind, and to create a whole, just some sort of lovely little fairy tale narrative, that they're living. And they really just don't want to accept what the truth points to, which is, a bunch of, organisms, parasitically exploiting each other And we happen to have enough intelligence to say, no, that's not right. That's not right. That's not fair. You know, that's horrible. We can do that and do better. But it's still not. You can't make the game better. And see, they want to pretend the game has legitimacy somewhere at its core. Like somehow the universe just hungers to be conscious. Some kind of crap like that. But it's all over. I mean, people are just so full of shit. Excuse my less than eloquent way of stating that. But yes, they are stinky shit. So anyway, this should work. I should be able to just pop fake Sagan up here. Yeah. Well, look at that. It worked. Amazing. So I have this sped up a little bit. I haven't played the whole video. I listened to a little bit. So he's basically just, he's ragging on materialism as if the fact that we have been designed with a biological agenda means that we can't understand any of that. Like somehow, because our reproductive activity is tied to sex, that somehow we're not smart enough to separate sex from reproduction, which we are. Just about everything we do, we can take the biological purpose, the historical purpose of an emotion or anything, and we can reformulate it into a constructive social purpose, just as we sort of have been able to become civilized, become instead of being nepotistic, we become nationalistic, and some people might even become humanistic, and then eventually they might even become sentientistic, and then eventually they become depressed because they'll figure out that all their loved ones are getting horribly and terribly brutalized, and they'll say that's not acceptable. Anyway, so that's what we're going to do this time for a change. Or like the old days. That's it, yes. The good old days. A response video to fake Sagan. Whatever. Christian-y.
Your first sip from the cup of the natural sciences will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you.
Okay, so apparently some Heisenberg guy said that, which, who cares? Doesn't, there's no, the facts don't change when I'm alive and then when I'm dead. They're all the same facts.
In this video, I'd like to discuss the philosophy of materialism and its influence and consequences for Western culture and society. I believe that materialism is the prevailing view in Western society in 2018. And whether...
So he's saying it's the prevailing view, even though the majority of the human race is in some form or another an angel believer in, or some spiritual demons, or some sort of fluffy bullshit philosophy that doesn't have anything to do with materialism in the sense that the material was created by a god, So it's just wrong. And then secondly, he is obviously implying that materialism is a philosophy rather than just one fact in a philosophy. It's just one of the little facts that, yes, it's a material universe not created by a benevolent, wise creator. And that, I essentially think, is what he means by materialism, is atheism.
This view is explicitly stated or not, it is what most people believe. So
yes, most people who say they're Christians aren't really Christians, and they obviously don't have any faith in their God, and they, they're afraid to die, and all of that crap. And why would they be if they think they're going to a blissful place where there's no longer any of this horrible strife and, such. Except the poor will be with you always, whatever that means. Poor people in heaven? Oh, hell with that.
What is materialism? Well, if we look at the definition, there are two of them. Materialism can refer to the prioritization of material comfort and wealth over
Yeah, so materialism can be that silly thing where they just say all you care about is money. Materialism, like material goods, having cars, having things, having property, having things. What's a kind of materialism? Things are made out of material. It's materialism. Right, we're not talking about that kind.
The spiritual. And then there's the philosophical definition, which is that only material exists. Right? So there's no paranormal, there's no supernatural, anything metaphysical is nonsense. We live in a strictly material world governed by causal determinism, cause leading to effect. And the materialist believes that...
So anyway, cause and effect, a perfectly reasonable kind of thing in my opinion. I mean, it makes perfectly good sense to me. So again, but it's just one part of a philosophy, understanding that everything that you can perform. That performance requires a certain amount of investment. Garbage in, garbage out. You want to play the piano well? Well, you got to practice a lot. You want to do anything well, you have to work on doing it well. It won't just happen. You have to put in the causes to get the effect. Now, that's a very reasonable thing to understand, that you're not going to be a very good driver if you don't have any awareness of how vehicles, how much they weigh and how quickly they can stop and how much pressure the tires can take. And I mean, if you don't have any awareness of the mechanics, you will fail to be a very good driver.
We live in rather sort of a clockwork universe whose mainspring was wound at the moment of the Big Bang. And ever since then, that spring has been slowly but inexorably...
You know, I mean, this is another sort of annoying thing about the physics argument. It's just that this whole idea that, that physicists speculate, and then it becomes some social meme that we all have to believe in or something. This whole idea of whether the universe banged or whether it fizzled or whether it farted or whether it... Who cares, I would say, first off. But they haven't proven anything. They really have no blueprint. So, and there really is, and as a fact, it does maybe change perspective a little to realize that maybe the universe oscillates and there's lots of possibilities. And it just seems kind of silly that we all have to accept this axiom of creation moments. So even the Big Bang is a lot like, and then God said, "Let there be light." It's just it's turning the universe into something that needed a start, when maybe that's just the wrong way to think.
The decompressing, winding down towards the inevitable heat death of the universe, that cosmological fate in the...
I don't know why I didn't turn off. That's an interesting subject, though. I have just talking about, just because you can look at it thermodynamically so many different ways. So if you didn't do this silly Einstein bent space thing, and you actually thought there was a real force that was pushing things together, you could sort of understand that real force is now trapped in the very material things it made. The compression has trapped the energy. So that's where, E equals mc squared. A ton of energy is inside the matter. Well, how did it get in there? Well, the energy had to push it in there. And that consumed energy. And that eventually then you have less energy on the outside pushing things together, and that the pendulum will swing. Okay, so the pendulum just swings. The universe compresses, the universe decompresses. And so it's just another way of looking at it. I think that's, it doesn't have to be this perception of that it has a beginning and an end. It just swings. It gets tight, then it gets loose. So I would sort of argue galaxies are an example of that, because they used to call the embryonic galaxy a quasar, because it was all compact and very bright, very energetic. And they only find them deep in space, which means they're primitive things. And that the modern galaxies are all big, but not as energetic. And so therefore, they're falling apart, you could argue. Galaxies aren't things collecting matter. They're losing it. Yeah.
Distant future in which every chemical reaction that can take place has taken place, leaving behind nothing but an inert matter in a...
Well, theoretically, again, if you don't think in terms of some sort of mechanism we're not aware of that contains the universe, you could argue if you just count the photons leaving the universe, you could figure out that eventually it's going to run out of energy to make those things. There ain't going to be any more energy because they all left going that way. Just logical.
Cold, dark cemetery of a universe.
This solar system will be that. So that's the only part you really have to understand. And we don't have any real practical way to get anywhere out of here. So the fact is the human race will become nothing. There won't be a single little piece of rock with a etching on it. There won't be a single fossil. There won't be a single remnant. There won't be like the Statue of Liberty's little torch. There won't be anything left. It'll all be gone, every bit of it. All for naught.
The materialist view rejects any notion of teleology, whether it's theological or otherwise.
Yes, and for a good reason. It's an incredibly gay word in the first place. It just, screams, I don't know, spandex and Pampers. It just really, ooh, what is that? But yeah, you don't need any of that crap. If you describe what the model, how it functions, how the machine works, it's a maze. It's a mechanism. And all an honest human being is trying to do is draw a picture of how the mechanism works. A little like picture of a light bulb with a little filament, and put electricity in, it gets hot. Just a diagram of how this functions. That's accurate and not full of wishful thinking and fairy concepts.
So, any claim that there is a will at work behind the order of things, that things happen for a reason.
A will at work. Again, the materialists understand the concept that we seem to will things, in the sense that we have a motivating mechanism, and there is a decisions made about, we have choices, and when we make a choice, we sort of say, that was my will. But a lot of us could say, I've never been terribly comfortable with the concept. I mean, there's not a whole lot of circumstances where I would say I willed it. No, it's I thought of it, or it's a choice I made. It was the best choice at the time. I thought it was a good idea. I don't know. I mean, you're you people who think, okay, that somehow we make our decisions in some other way than based on what knowledge we've collected about what's right and wrong, about what's acceptable, unacceptable, what dignity is, how important it is. Obviously, there's people who just couldn't care less if, you wrote on their tombstone, this shithead was a lousy piece of crap, and they just couldn't care if you took a piss on their grave forever. They just couldn't care if they sucked. They have no self-respect. They don't have any concept of worrying about it. They don't have any sense that I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to embarrass my parents. I don't want to embarrass my siblings. They just don't have any of that, like Donald Trump.
That is heresy to the materialist. Now,
It's heresy if you mean by free will, free from intelligence, free from education, free from conditioning, maturation, free from psychological inhibitions created by childhood trauma, free from yes, if it's something like there's some stream of willingness, of will that's floating in the ether up here, and somehow I can just tap into the holy ether to make my decisions. You know, oh, I have to make a decision. What does the holy ether say? Yeah, if that's your concept, it's ludicrous and silly, yes. And a rational person should say, yeah, that's ludicrous and silly. I obviously don't behave that way. Obviously, there's no indication that my decisions are being made because of some voice in my head coming from the nowhere. It's always one of the characters inside of me I already know. You know, the you know, selfish little kid or the mature philosopher. You know, these are different personalities that might exist in me, and they're the ones having the conversation. There's no angels throwing their input in. I'm not possessed by the Holy One.
I think this is what most people believe. And I think that what lies at the heart of this materialist philosophy that most of us in Western society hold is neo-Darwinism.
So another stupid kind of phrase, right? It's like neo-atheism, neo-mathematicalism, neo... you know, I mean, it's just silly. You either are or you are not. There's no neo on the subject beyond the fact that you recognize that the process that created human beings was evolution. First, a chemical evolution to create a DNA molecule, and then the DNA molecule became a hard drive, you know, to write software on. So first you had the hardware, and then you had the software, kind of a metaphor. But yeah, it evolves by this process of making a bunch of bad copies and letting the bad copies fight with each other, and the one that wins you'll call a good copy.
Darwinist evolutionary theory, which in the corridors of academia is known as the modern synthesis. Now, this video is not anything to do with evolution denial. As Carl Sagan famously stated,
I think it will. So I think it will entirely deny evolution in its principles, which is the idea that the selecting process happens in the arena of our life experience as we play the game, how the game is played. It's good intentions don't matter, nice guy doesn't matter, lots of things don't matter. All that matters is there's going to be a winner and a loser, a survivor and a dead guy.
Evolution is a fact, not a theory. But natural selection is merely a theory.
Alright, so that's just crazy, right? I mean, you don't really have evolution without natural selection. It would be like calling the GMOs or something evolution. It'd be like calling every kind of plant that we have refined over time evolution. It's not it's the exact opposite of evolution. Our domestication of things, it's like bananas being cloned. They're not evolving, obviously. There's no natural selection. Without natural selection, you don't call it evolution. You call it something else, gardening. You call it, you know, they have words for that, genetic manipulation stuff. And the word isn't, I'm evolving things. No, you're constructing, you're, whatever that word is.
One has only to examine the fossil record with the eye of a layperson to see that evolution has taken place and is taking place. I remember the first time I saw a fossilized trilobite as a very young child, it reminded me of the horseshoe crabs I picked up.
It reminded me of the Amazing Atheist. No, I guess not. Yeah, it's very spider-like.
On the beach at Cape Cod. And I could see how different species are morphologically similar and change over time. So
yeah, it's very interesting. Sand dollars. You know, it's basically a sunfish. I mean, a starfish. Sand dollar. So it's just, you know, the starfish was, you know, too fleshy, too vulnerable, and so it grew, you know, a calcified skin over the top of it, you know, bones to protect it. You know, just kind of obvious evolution kind of a thing. Just screams, oh, God didn't do that. He didn't leave the old version and the new version to get, no. These are obviously evolving things.
very self-evident fact.
Yes.
But what is the mechanism that drives evolution? How does evolution work?
DNA molecule. Kind of entirely. Without that, the changes would be so minuscule. Like the changes of like a sperm. A sperm doesn't have its own DNA. So sperm cells haven't evolved at all. They just don't, because there's no real mechanism for them to do it. They're so distant from the carrier DNA that they don't have any influence. Their life and death doesn't mean anything. It doesn't refine their species.
The neo-Darwinists confidently state that they have the answer to that question, but I think that confidence is misplaced, and I think it's led to a lot of unnecessary philosophical baggage.
This sounds like just such a pile of crap. I mean, it's a perfectly rational understanding of what time allows, and that it allows this complexity thing to happen. What might be the stupid fallacy is that somehow complexity leads to making something more fit or better, when not necessarily is it a good thing. It's just a better killer, or it's a, you know, success won't mean you deserved it by any kind of rational ethical equation.
That Western culture has been saddled with, much to our detriment. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about what I mean. So,
maybe I'll speed this up a little more. Oops.
The materialist is obligated to believe that love is a sham.
Okay, it said love is a sham. It might be too fast now, but we're going to go for it. Obviously, it's a four-letter word, and it means so many things that it's just silly to talk about it, really, because it means everything from respecting something, admiring, being attracted to. It's just too complex a word. And then, you know, when you start getting into the romantic love, you know, that, again, even that's complicated, because are you really, oh, I love the person because of what they do or how they do it, and all, or is it just because, you know, I like having sex with them? I mean, this is, you know, or I feel like I own them. You know, they look up at me, and I own them, and they're my property. I mean, love, yeah, not necessarily a good thing, and a useless word in philosophy. I mean, it just can't be more useless as a word, because it has it has 4,000 definitions. It just can't mean anything in a sentence. It's just crap. I mean, unless you put the word hate next to it or something, it just can't mean anything.
The parents don't love their children. That when a mother protects her child, she's doing it not out of love, but out of a self-preservation instinct. The same.
Okay, so this is just such a horse crap, right? There's no materialist that says that. Even I've never even heard one who would say they don't do it because of emotions. You know, not by any kind of. They don't sit there and reason. my genetic code is in the road, I need to save my genetic code, blah, 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 blah. They have an emotional attachment. Now we're just trying to measure what those attachments mean. And here you are essentially defending the idea that we know it's nepotism for most people. Children only have value when it's your children. We see that's how people behave in every day. We see that in their attitudes. They just couldn't give a crap about the idea of a child. All they care about is, it's mine, it's important, it's yours, it's expendable. That's their attitude. All right, and that come about because they have, an inability to understand that they are being driven by an emotion. So it's quite obvious that an emotional attachment that wasn't reason-based, that wasn't done through, you don't understand it because of logic, you understand it because of personal bigotries and prejudices and circumstances. It's not a meritorious placement of value. Your emotions most of your emotions aren't merit-based. You don't love people based on their character, as stated, and we know that most people love people for these cosmetic and superficial reasons. So, and you see this all over the place in the religious community. They seem more bigoted than most humans.
Biological instinct that compels one to recoil from a flame, step back from a precipice, or flee from an attacking predator. That this sense of this.
So obviously we sense good and bad, and the only thing that, because we're tribal or pack, we're pack animals. We're best compared to like wolves. I mean, we're best compared to apes, the great apes, gorillas and chimpanzees and bonobos and such, baboons, and they're tribal. They're pack animals. And so we do have a capacity to do this my family, we are family thing. And that's as far as the vision goes. And we'll go commit genocide on the other families. And they all do that. So that's just a fact, And the truth is that, because we have that capacity to extend our sense of value, our sense of what would be a bad thing, like my wife getting killed or my kids getting killed or some kind of crap like that. We can do that with a dog or a cat or a pigeon. We can include in that group of things that need our protection, that deserve our protection, lots of other things. So it's just kind of bullshit to say we can't see past some sort of me first attitude, because of course we can emotionally, and we certainly can philosophically. So even if we don't do it emotionally, even if emotional people don't have an attachment to animals, even the most disinterested can figure out that it's better not to, it's better to turn the steering wheel than to run over the rabbit.
Instinct of self-preservation has been extended beyond the individual to the child, because on an instinctual level, the mother recognizes that half of her DNA is inside her offspring. So really, when the mother protects her child, it's not an act of love. It's
Yeah. Again, so this is just kind of a bullshit way to do this, because we know that nobody's thinking of the genetic causes of their emotions when they're experiencing their emotions. They're not thinking of genetic causes. When somebody falls in love or something, they're not thinking, oh, I've been genetically manipulated to find that attractive or that attractive. No, nobody's doing that.
an act of self-preservation that's taking part on the genetic level. It's the selfish gene defending itself. Now, there's nothing that materialists hate more than any attempt to anthropomorphize nature. Because what could be more irrational than ascribing human characteristics to the natural?
No. What could be more irrational than to ascribe intelligence to a selection process that obviously doesn't apply intelligence? It just allows 1,000 copies to go out and get lucky. That's it. It's not doing anything. It's saying get into the arena and We'll just find out who wins. And today, that'll be the winner. Tomorrow, the winner might look entirely different because he's going to be luckier or less lucky or whatever. But one day, the winner will look like this, and the next day, the winner will look like that. It has no brain. It has no judgment. It's applying no standards at all, where, of course, we apply all kinds of rationally understood value standards. We understand that. We can understand that my child's welfare isn't more important than other children's welfare. That it isn't okay if their child dies and my child doesn't. People won't say that if they're rational.
World, since of course Homo sapiens are extra-dimensional beings from another plane of existence. We have nothing to do with nature. That's sarcasm, by the way. Please don't ask me in the comments section why I think we're extra-dimensional beings. It's sarcasm. Okay. So the materialist hates it when anybody tries to anthropomorphize nature, right? Pseudo-scientific wacko James Lovelock with your Gaia theory about the biosphere.
Right, it is ridiculous, and it has no foundation. It's just wishful thinking. It literally is just writing Three Bear stories.
Changing inorganic matter to make the inorganic environment more conducive to the survival of the biosphere. That's anthropomorphization. You can't do that. But it's fine to refer to genes as being selfish, and genes are these Machiavellian things that are pulling our puppet strings, right? It's not.
Yeah, well, it's a use of an analogistic kind of word. You're coming up with an analogy for how much judgment is going into what the genes are doing, and it's again just kind of pointing out that there is no judgment. The fact is, the gene is going to win as a chemical composition. The more copies it can place on a strand of DNA, it increases its likelihood of maintaining its existence. Just a fact. Now, obviously, the gene itself has no brain. It's not doing something selfish. But the truth is, all the pieces of chemistry are just as much as we fight with each other. They're fighting essentially with each other. It's a bunch of varieties of stuff. The stuff is placed on the molecule, and the winner is going to be the stuff that's still on the thing tomorrow. And the stuff that ain't on the thing tomorrow is lost forever. It's just the truth.
They're not just chemicals in our bodies. They're not just mere base pairs of nucleotides that create protein. Oh, no. This is the driving force. This is the telos. This is the...
Look, the fact is, it would be. It's only by this circumstance that we can be doing this sophisticated thinking and talking about what we care about. Because clearly, we could have been crocodiles. We could have been organisms that succeeded through a very selfish agenda. And if that was our origin, the intelligence never would have evolved into anything other than creating strategies to kill other things. And that would have been it. There wouldn't be any other strategy. There wouldn't be any need to preserve any other players because it's a single player game for those organisms. Intelligence happened to happen to an organism that wasn't playing a single player game. They were definitely playing a family game, and clearly, the evidence points clearly at it, they were playing a tribe game. And if it wasn't for the fact that we were tribal, we, in all probability, wouldn't be even half as decent as we are.
The will to power that underlies all life, right? Yeah. But that's not it.
Yeah, it's whatever. I claim don't spread Nietzsche on facts or rationality because he was an idiot.
Morphizing nature. The materialist is obligated to believe that when his pet puppy dog licks his face, it's not out of any real affection, it's because of the...
Nobody argues that either, so that's another silly argument. That's urban legend nonsense. Clearly, dogs are hugely invested in being social. They are social animals. Clearly, the dog's doing it. They do it with each other. I mean, the dog is clearly doing it as a way of shaking hands and hugging. It's their way of hugging.
The dog is a social parasite. He depends on his master for food, and he knows that if he pleases you, you might give him a treat. So when he licks your face, he's really just trying to pardon me.
Well, he's just getting a salt lick, frankly. That's part of it, okay? It tastes good to the dog, all right? And they're used to licking things, you know, to rip it after they kill an organism, and that's their tongue is a little blah, 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 because they, you know, that's part of the process of, you know, getting hungry and getting salivating and getting ready to digest their meal. So, yeah, we taste good. So it just makes it even more fun for the dog.
Manipulating you for kibbles and bits. So those stories that you hear about a dog wasting away at its master's grave, that's just a really stupid dog who thinks that the corpse is going to reach a milk bone.
I don't think a dog can understand what a corpse is. I don't think a dog can understand what being dead is. So I think those stories are a little bit suspect. None of them have happened in the modern era. You know, we don't have any video. Like, I can't go to the live cam of sad dog sitting on grave, right? There's no live cam of the sad dog sitting on his master's grave, is there? No, there really aren't. So these are sort of, you know, fun little stories, but they have like a grain of truth. The dog saw the master in the box, and he said, okay, the box in the ground. Okay, I'll sit here and wait for him to dig himself out.
Up through the ground, and because they're just social parasites, right? The materialist is obligated to believe.
No, they have friends. They're friends. Animals can have friends. Humans can have friends. Things can have attachments. They can be their friend. They're like pets. They're friends. Most people would think of these you know, we call them pets, but for many people, they would say, he's my best friend. She's my best friend. They're friends.
That altruism is a sham. That if you are
Altruism, yes, is a sham in the sense that we always have to make it personally, right? It has to. Everything has to finally, no matter where your ideas are doing, they always have to go through the final test of I have to believe in it. You know, I have to. On a personal level, you have to really believe, or it ain't going to happen. You can't just believe it philosophically. You sort of have to believe it in your heart, or your biology just won't let it happen. It won't go along. That's just the way it is. I mean, the idea is your intelligence has to try to condition your psychology to react the way it's reacting. It has to, like the word war comes up. War. Now, your philosophy has to make your psychology understand that means bad, torture, death of good things, horrible unfairnesses, rape and pillage. You know, it has to draw you a picture so you can emotionally understand, oh, okay, bad. You can't just say bad. It has to show and make you feel the bad.
Down the street and you see a destitute, homeless beggar on the side of the road, and you're compelled to invite this poor person to a restaurant for a nice meal. You're not actually...
Well, whatever. None of that actually happens in real life too often, but even when it does, it's clearly a suspect act on the person doing it, right? I mean, it's this gesture kind of thing. It doesn't really solve the problem. You know, he doesn't spend his life donating to causes that might prevent the existence of the mentally ill and might even provide for, you know, hospitals for them to live in rather than live on the street. Doesn't do anything politically active to fix any of this shit. So it's just a gestury thing to make him feel good about being a pariah. Like Michael Jackson accepting, you know, a Human of the Year award for giving $10,000 to a charity, right? And you know, they could give him a whole trophy and a plaque, and they have a whole ceremony. He gave $10,000. I mean, chump change. Yeah. You don't think we can be suspect whether he gives a fuck about the cause, and he might just be doing it to satisfy his own little need to think he's not a grotesque glutton?
Doing it out of a sense of genuine altruism or love for your fellow man. You're doing it, again, out of a sense of an instinct of self-preservation, which is...
Again, it's not an instinct of self-preservation. It's clearly if it's any kind of rudimentary emotional function, it's the rudimentary function that creates ties between like organisms. You know, tribal bonding glue. And you're just letting other things into the tribe.
Extended outward beyond yourself in a very convoluted way through what's known as kin selection. Because the homeless beggar might be the same ethnicity you are, he may be the same race that you are, at the very least he's the same species, so on some instinctual level, you recognize that he shares a certain...
Right, but none of that needs to exist if all you're really doing is you're making money, say stealing money from widows, and you've made a nice big pile of money, and now you want to find some way to, like, somehow I have to prove I'm not a scumbag, and so you're just doing some pretend good deed, okay? So it doesn't matter what the pretend good deed is, but you're just pretending that this fixes your rape. You know, it's like you're counseling women at a rape center, but you were raping women the week before, and you're just saying somehow I undid my rape by helping them. It's just bullshit.
Certain percentage of genetic material in common with you, and therefore, by fostering his chance of survival, you are guaranteeing the survival of your genes, but really you're not guaranteeing...
Right, so none of that would come into it. I mean, obviously that probably would be an influence, right? If you saw somebody homeless who looked just like you, you know, that probably would affect you more, obviously, I think. And so you'd probably react, you know, to that image a lot more than you would the more they don't look like you. So I could see that certainly happening. And again, it has nothing to do with you having any kind of evolutionary response, you know, beyond the rational one of feeling the pain because the pain is close to you, it's connected to you through something obvious.
Survival of your genes are guaranteeing the survival of themselves and using you to do it because, to borrow Richard Dawkins' term, you are nothing but a lumbering robot, a vehicle for your DNA.
Yes, you're a robot in every way. So you're not just a robot carrying DNA, but we're clearly just the vehicle for the sperm because that's, you know, and the eggs. So that's the only thing that matters here in terms of the original function. That's the function, is the only way you exist in the future is to lay an egg, to be in the future. That's it. You have to do that part. So that's the primary function of this whole biology, is to protect the precious seeds.
It's all about the selfish genes. Selfish genes. Me, self.
So even that whole attitude, like somehow by labeling it the selfish genes, that somehow Dawkins is supporting selfishness, which obviously he's not. So even bending it that way is silly. That's obviously the core function. The core function is rudimentary and crude. If intelligence, if a Tyrannosaurus Rex was the first thing to get intelligence, it would have the same dilemmas we have. It would be built for a purpose. It would know that purpose is inefficient and sloppy and messy, and it would have feel some obligation to up its game. That's what intelligence would make obvious to it, is that I got to play a better game than this. And we're just doing the same thing. We can say we got to play a better game because our basic hardware sucks. We're not basically made to be nice people. We're basically made to be selfish and It's just the truth. You want to pretend the truth is something else? Go ahead and pretend. Intelligence is the only thing that saves us from being steamrollers. I mean, being dumb trucks.
This is what materialists believe. And is it any wonder that the pharmaceutical industry is making a mint selling antidepressants by the metric ton? Is it any wonder that we have a rash of anti-natalist philosophy like the South African philosopher David Benatar, like Thomas Ligotti, or YouTube's very own Gary Inmendham Mosher, who all believe that it would be better not to have been born at all, that human life and existence is a horrible, alienating, existential nightmare. And it is
No, it's incredibly wasteful. It creates an unnecessary torture because there's no function. The only our whole function is to do something that doesn't need to get done, which is laying eggs, okay, biologically. And it's so easy to recognize that our emotional function drives on the negatives, on us finding something that's broken or flawed or not good enough and having to fix it. And that's it. It's just compulsive need to improve the circumstance. And we all know those kind of stories, you know, the pee in the mattress story or the some other, where, and we see it in our lives all over the place. It doesn't matter how rich some people get, it's never enough. Doesn't matter how many gold medals, it's not enough. You know, that's the design, and it's stupid. It's such a waste. All this carnage, these 1,000 copies battling, you destroy most of them in some horrible manner, so one asshole can say, I won. Big deal. It's a farce. And here you are just defending a farce. A farce that just tortures organisms for no good reason. There's no gain. So there's no defense for the pain.
I wonder that they believe this when the neo-Darwinists, and in particular the evolutionary psychologists, hard science that is, are telling us that our consciousness was an evolutionary mistake. That consciousness is merely an illusion, a trick the brain plays on itself, a trick of our highly evolved and overly complex brains.
Well, whatever. Who's saying it's overly complex or any of this other garbage? It's quite obvious that, in my opinion, that the mechanism is just basically there's this idea that value is this abstract concept. And so we're robots. You could say you can make a robot, but you can't, if it doesn't have any notion of how to make value, place value, then he can't be obligated to do something that's painful, let's say. So it's this whole reward and punishment. So you really have two brains. I mean, you have the brain that feels, and you have the brain that thinks about what you feel. That's agenda is to make you feel better. And that's all that's really going on is this battle between the two brains, the strategizing brain and the brain that just does the valuing, that feels. There's no value in the world. The value is only in the value of the welfare, the feeling welfare of sentient things. If there was no sentient things in the universe, how could anybody say there was value in the universe? What would it matter? If nothing can get tortured and nothing can get pleasured, how could I ever write a script for action? There'd be just no purpose in it. It couldn't accomplish anything. It's not broken. The sentient brain creates the existence of good and bad. It doesn't just identify what's good and bad, it creates it by feeling.
Is it any wonder that people believe this?
Is it any wonder that most of the human race believes in some fairy tale? That their existence was endorsed by some super intelligence who said, oh yes, this is a great idea. Go out there and make a huge frickin' mess. Live as a leper. You know, get born, you know, sharing your brother's brain. You know, die of leukemia when you're 6. I mean, fuck you.
And that we're all fucking miserable. And that we're all behaving in ways that are amoral.
Well, clearly you're the one who's lived that life, right? You've been a druggie, so clearly you haven't been able to take life straight. You know, you can't handle your emotions in interacting with other people, so you can't even see your daughter because you're afraid you'll punch her in the teeth. It's shit. And you're passing judgment on the materialists. Hilarious.
Is it any wonder that Eric Harris, one of the Columbine school shooters who birthed the era of the modern school shooter.
Yes, a troubled adolescent. Let's use that as a model for something. No, that's not. Hardly a philosopher, I would say.
Is it any wonder that when he held a gun to the head of his classmate Cassie Bernal and demanded that she renounce her belief in God, and she refused to do so, and he proceeded to execute her, that he was wearing...
Like he wasn't going to do that anyway. Ironically.
A t-shirt emblazoned with the slogan, "Natural Selection." Is it any wonder that Eric Harris wrote in his journal that he would like...
All right, let's just go through all the Christian criminals of history. All the child molesting. Yeah, we can just go through all that crap. Therefore, we've convicted anybody who shares your philosophy. So we'll just go find all the evil Christians, and then we'll just prove that Christianity's bad because evil people believe it. I mean, this is just such a frickin' fallacious argument. The argument from, well, one of your kind was a troubled teenager and did horrible things. Amazingly weak argumentation.
Life to resemble a game of doom in which the fittest survive and the strong kill the weak.
These were guys who shot themselves. Obviously not paying much attention to the Dawkins theory by your standards. Obviously have every intention of going out with their game. So your whole theory collapses that this has something to do with neo-Darwinism. Obviously they weren't neo-Darwinists, were they? No, they weren't.
These are the psychological consequences of this.
They were killing perpetrators. Right? They weren't trying to win. They were trying to stop perpetrators, quite obviously.
Philosophy, this toxic belief system, this spiritual cancer, which is strangling Western civilization and reducing us to the level of...
Obviously, Western civilization is totally connected to Christianity. You're the fake Christians who all voted for Trump, right? You showed you have no belief in your God. You will humiliate Jesus any opportunity you get. You will wipe your ass with toilet paper with Jesus' face on it. All right? And you know it. You know none of those people think that Donald Trump is going to do what Jesus did, that he's going to act in the Jesus way. You know that he hasn't even sincerely read one paragraph of what Jesus wrote. You know that. So you're stinking hypocrites. I mean, you're just such disgusting hypocrites. I mean, duplicitous hypocrites. You do a video saying, I'm a racist and proud of it. You vote for a racist. And then you pretend you're for Jesus.
Degenerate animals with no sense of civic responsibility.
Again, more absolute nonsense. A ton of people. Noam Chomsky, you go down, lots of people with lots of concern for the poor engineering that is the definition of our civilization. and its pitiful values. Just absolute rubbish. And look, it's your ignorant kind. It's the religious, the ignorant who are the liability, the ill-informed, the people who really can't recite any of the basic functions of evolution, the ones who are totally ignorant of it. They're the ones that are ruining our civilization.
For whom morality is a joke.
Well, morality in the sense that what? It's bad to be gay? Oh, God. Yes, that's a joke. That's right. Your bigotry is a joke. What morality are you talking about? Exactly. There's no definition of where you're showing me how Christians are in any way more moral. They molest children. A lot of them do. They marry their kids.
Is it any wonder? Now,
So you should bring up the Branch Davidians, right? Fanatic neo-Christian. Look where that gets you. Raping your own double daughter.
I can already hear the atheists in the audience screeching autistically. What do you suggest, Christopher Anderson? That we delude ourselves, tell ourselves comforting fairy tales?
They wouldn't even be comforting to me, so I don't even know how you get comfort out of being lorded over by some fucking insane god who just sounds like the dullest, stinkiest, boringest, unimaginative creep that could possibly be formed. I can't imagine somebody who's more like I wouldn't want to have dinner with him. He's so fucking uninteresting.
I personally would much rather believe the awful truth. Oh, because I'm so brave. I'm a Nietzschean Superman.
Yeah, it's some more bullshit, right? That somehow, it's fair game. I mean, the fact is that all the philosophies are going to be non-you, are going to be a whole variety, okay? There's a whole bunch, just like there's a whole bunch of religions. So I could package all the religions, so I could make you be responsible for every religious person. So the Muslims are your fault, the Hindus, the this, the that. I can blame all of them on you. And that's all you're doing here. You're just painting all the people who aren't believers as Nietzscheites. No, I'm afraid not. There's better and worse.
Bravely facing up to an existential crisis. But not a hint of intellectual vanity at work here. No.
Whatever that means. Somehow the internet, it's intellectual vanity to recognize where somebody would say, yeah, it's a tough game we're playing. Evolution's brutal. Becoming vegetarian. I wonder what the percentages are, atheists versus Christians who become vegetarians for ethical reasons.
I'm not suggesting that you delude yourself. What I'm suggesting is that materialism, while it is viewed by many to be self-evident, something that only...
So again, he's saying evolution. Yeah, it's almost self-evident, but obviously it's not quite self-evident. You don't have the perfect geological record in the sense that, yes, the missing links don't get there because of punctuated equilibrium and the fact that the tribes that did the most advancing were the ones that were the most isolated. And so they didn't get fossilized. So, yeah, lots of reasons why we don't have this perfectly. Oh, yeah, now it makes perfect sense. But, for especially people 500 years ago. But, yeah, it does smell like it, man. You don't have to look at a monkey all that hard to say, holy shit, he's just like a little person, isn't he? It's not hard to see.
A mentally ill or very naive person wouldn't agree with. The materialism really is a philosophical bill of wares, and not an apolitical one at that.
Yeah, whatever. I could say the same thing. I could say Christianity has nothing to do with Christianity; it just has to do with greedy people, and wealth, ambition. Just so funny. It's so ironic. Christians are such capitalists. They're such greedy fucks. It's so obvious, right? I mean, they vote for it all the time. The red state Christian Bible Belt. They just keep voting, to create any kind of racket, any way to steal money. They seem like such money whores, such materialists.
A lot of this belief system has its roots in French Revolution. It was believed that because the church had allied itself with the crown, in order for freedom to be obtained, religion had to be wiped out.
Too bad, unsuccessful. Yeah, that'd be great.
T.H. Huxley, Darwin's bulldog, he certainly was no fan of the church. Now let's talk a little bit about...
Obviously. For good reason.
That prestigious naturalist Charles Darwin, who is viewed by many as the father of evolutionary theory.
Right, again, and just more nonsense, right? So believed by people when you know the facts, and you know that there was lots of people working on exactly the same theory, and that Darwin was slow and dragging his feet, to have to even say it. He was uncomfortable with the whole thing, didn't want the job, all of that crap. But the facts were that he compiled a nice list of the facts that point to this conclusion, and that's all Darwin did. He just listed a bunch of facts. He didn't even make a substantial argument beyond just listing a whole pile of facts.
First and foremost, he is the first scientist to come up with a coherent theory of evolution.
So again, yes, there was others. So you're conceding the point.
French scientist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. And Lamarck believed in the heritability of acquired traits. That is to say...
Yes, he believed in something that's impossible, that you could will your genes to change. Like if you wanted to win a gold medal, but you were 4'7" and you just weren't going to happen, you could just imagine being taller, and it would make your genetic code taller. Yeah, pretty fucking stupid. Yeah, it's worth a chuckle.
A skinny guy who works at a blacksmith forge his whole life and builds big muscles could then go on to have children who are also born with big muscles.
Yes, a woman could have silicone implants, and now her genetic code will have bigger breasts. Totally stupid. Yeah, totally.
And we call that Lamarckian.
We call that retarded in this house.
Heritability. Now, that idea was ridiculed and derided as pseudoscience by...
Yes, by all the rational scientists who said, you can't make that make any sense. No. I mean, they didn't have chromosomes yet, okay? So they didn't know about DNA. But they could still sort of see that this whole, like I can wish myself into being Cary Grant or something is just retarded. Like, oh yeah, I'll just wish myself into having attractive children. Like, I won't inherit my nose. I'll inherit somebody else's nose. Come on. Yes, rational scientists said, nah, you just really can't fit this wacky piece of the puzzle. Doesn't fit anywhere really well.
The neo-Darwinists such Richard Dawkins for a long time. And people would accuse one another of Lamarckian ideas, right? Although now with the discovery of epigenetics, we know there's actually some level of truth to this.
Yeah, it's really no level. The discovery of epigenetics is another big fat failure of getting science, the actual science, converted into some public understanding that has something to do with the truth. Epigenetics is error code. It just means that you've broken the genetic code even more. There is no epigenetic improving. There's just making the egg shittier. Okay, more error code. And yes, error code makes more mutations, which can possibly in the future make somebody improved. But the fact is, it's more likely to make a whole bunch of unimproved first. And you also have to have a standard where the improvement is fundamentally an error. So again, you have to recognize that we're not doing that. We're not even genetically evolving or improving, right? Most of the people having kids aren't the smart people, they're the dumb people. So let's understand, we're really not headed the right way. Most of the people having kids aren't people who had excellent genetic health, heredity. They're mostly people who were rescued or saved and by penicillin or this or that or appendix or this. There've been where our code is getting worse, not better. And that's what epigenetics is. Epigenetics just means that you can starve a woman for a few years and her eggs will suffer and they won't be as good. See, she can't make new eggs every year. All right? She's stuck with the same ones for her whole life. And so everything that happens in her life will irradiate those eggs. And all epigenetics is basically saying there's a component of your existence that depends on a bunch of code that's in the egg. And that code ages and gets worse. That's why women shouldn't have kids over 40. It's because her eggs are likely to be flawed and the kid's going to be broken.
I find it very interesting how closely the prevailing scientific beliefs of the day are tied with politics. You know, you could use climate scientists for...
You're doing that right now, you bum. But anyway, climate science.
For example of this. Whether climate change is anthropogenic or not kind of depends on the...
Anthropogenic? I mean, why don't you just say whether it's human caused or not? Which it obviously is. Obviously. That's another one of those things where, yes, that's obvious. Oh yeah, let's see, we took all that oil that was way, way down the ground that's completely made out of hydrocarbons and we threw it back in the atmosphere, just like back in the Jurassic when it was in the atmosphere. Yeah, no, you can't, I mean, 2 plus 2 math can figure this one out.
The country of the scientists you ask. If you ask an American scientist, you're far more likely to get a negative response, although not very unlikely, since academia is left-leaning and a lot of them are traitors against their country.
Whatever all that crap just meant. So he's talking about people being political, and he's politicizing, saying that somehow the liberal scientists want to make an excuse for telling people they can't have cars because they don't like cars, and instead of just admitting that they don't like cars because cars are boogeymen, they're making up some silly story about gases in the atmosphere to do their car hating. What the fuck?
By the way, you know, in Russian culture, somebody who's very unpatriotic is referred to as a liberashka. So the idea of liberalism over there means you hate your country. It's kind of interesting to view components of your own culture from the perspective of a different culture, and it really sort of puts things...
Oh, whatever, says you. No, that sounds like absolute horseshit, so fine. But whatever. Whatever. Russians dance around, with silly hats on. I mean, fucking... Who the fuck cares what a Russian thinks? They think putting puppets inside of puppets is fun. That entertains them.
Perspectives sometimes. But if you ask a climate scientist from anywhere else in the world, anywhere, they're probably going to say that climate change is anthropogenic. In fact, I'm sure there's Europeans watching this video right now saying there's no debate. You've been brainwashed by your media, which is in the pocket of the oil industry. Well, sure, right. But, anyone who is an American has a vested interest in hedging out the dollar, don't you? I mean, yeah, if you're watching this video from Europe right now, I'm sure you'd love to see.
I mean, just, you know, I mean, I don't really want to get into the politics of it, but it's just such a hypocrisy. We spend 100 years doing industrial revolution, creating all this technology, blah, 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 and just pissing away tons of energy using it. We blackened the skies. I mean, we did actually do that. We colossally polluted bodies of water, did lots of things. Now, some of that we're working on. We're making it a little less destructive. But a lot of it we've just moved to Mexico or moved the pollution to China. So, you know, the cost of production pollution. So we have this delusion that it's clean and free and we're not harming anybody. And here we are still using 70% of the world's energy as just gross pigs. Oh, amazing. But again, so I guess he really doesn't understand carbon at all, right? And the fact that, well, how did you think it got into the ground? I guess he has one of those things where the earth makes oil. I guess that's what he believes. It wasn't put there through millions of years of biological sinking.
The end of the petrodollar's hegemony. So wouldn't it be great if you could handcuff us with carbon taxes and retard our economic progress? That would be fucking Christmas.
Again, it has so little to do with our economic process, right? Because our economic process is all service to the rich that you've guaranteed with your retarded vote. We're all just the rich people's servants. We're just here to cut their grass and do this and that. We don't industry things anymore. We don't make anything anymore. We export that to some other country. Deluded fool.
For you guys, right? You love it. Now me, not so much, because I like my money. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. How much have you had in your lifetime? Oh. So he's gotten 27 likes and 1 dislike for this fucking right-wing puke.
So, you know, who's right? Who's wrong? Which is the objective view? Which one is the most supported by empirical evidence? Well, the point I'm making is it doesn't exactly work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. The selfish mob wins. They destroy everything. The greedy, ignorant, lowest common denominator moron crashes the bus every time because we have to let him drive. It's his fair share of drive time. Well, fuck that asshole. Fuck you.
Evidence can be interpreted a lot of different ways, and
Not really. I don't know how you reinterpret the fact that we took half the oil in the ground and put it in the atmosphere. The oil's black, full of hydrocarbons. Where does it go when we put it in the atmosphere? Does it go fly off to the moon or somewhere? Where does it go? Oh, that's right. It goes into the ground. It cycles back into the atmosphere again. It doesn't go back into the oil. The oil tank isn't getting refilled with the carbon we shot out, is it? Is the oil tank, is the carbon going back where it came from? No, it's staying in the atmosphere, just like in the Jurassic before the oil was down there. Durr.
Those ways depend on the observer. And
No environmental scientist necessary. You don't need an environmental scientist. You don't need a brain surgeon. You don't need a rocket scientist to just look at the obvious. I mean, you need a little bit of knowledge to understand how carbon sinks work and how rainforests are carbon sinks. You know, they create the bogs and they lock the carbon, and you know, so you can understand that if you're cutting down the rainforest, it's not going to hold any carbon anymore. The foot of topsoil will not absorb carbon that you're replacing the rainforest with.
And the observer's politics. Joseph Stalin, despite being a Machiavellian, power-hungry dictator, was also a Marxist true believer. He, his first order of business when
So apparently he's anti-Marxism now, which is, and Marxism was just pointing out the flaws in capitalism fundamentally, that it's a race to the bottom, that all you're trying to do is just keep finding lower and lower. You have to keep finding lower and lower cost of production to sustain your system. And so he's for that. And his audience is too stupid to even understand what he's saying here, which is basically, yeah, fuck the working man, fuck the poor, love the rich. Love the exploitanist.
Was to begin to
love the Christian exploitanist. Like Donald.
dismantling V.I. Lenin's NEP, the New Economic Policy, because it wasn't Marxist enough. It was a concession to bourgeoisie capitalism. So it's no surprise that the evolutionary theories of an Azerbaijani agronomist named Trofim Lysenko were very attractive to Stalin, because he couched his theories in the language of Marxism. He said, that evolutionary theory in the West that has to do with genes and genetics, that's bourgeoisie science. And I have a different way of looking at things. It's not about natural selection, it's about natural cooperation, a more Marxist way of looking at nature. And Lysenko believed...
Well, again, there's no point in pointing this out to assholes like this, but the fact is, you don't make a great souffle without breaking some eggs kind of argument. And it's just like our nation wouldn't have been what it was if it wasn't for slavery. It's just a fact. It gave us a huge head start. And then the exploitation of the immigrants, another huge advantage. So there's bad things that happen that are huge advantages. And the fact is, Russia would have never been what it became as a power, a superpower, if it wasn't for the fact that some eggs got to get broken.
That different plant species could actually morph into one another. You could turn barley into wheat, and you could turn wheat into grass.
Not that easily, frankly. That's a stretch, I think.
Species weren't so strictly delineated and partitioned off from one another. They could actually kind of blend, and the biosphere is like this one systemic thing, this one big thing. He also
so again, this is just such, like I said, this is the whatever fallacy, where you just pick a character from history and say, there's your icon, even though I never voted for Stalin. Why does it have to be my icon? I don't want him as an icon. How's that?
So also, like Lamarck, believed in the heritability of acquired traits. He thought that if you winterized crops over and over and over again, by the time you got to like the 5th or 6th crop cycle, you would have a crop that could withstand cold temperatures right from the get-go. That didn't work out too well. But a very attractive idea.
Well, the truth is, though, there's lots of hibernation that we did, hibernation or whatever, where we did exactly that. We just sort of forced the plant to evolve. We took a bunch of it, forced it to endure, and the one survivor we finally got, we said, hey, there's the winner. He's going to be able to do it. And so the next season we got 10 plants that survive, and the season after that we got 100 plants that survive. That's how it works.
The Joseph Stalin. And Lysenkoism became a term in the West. This is synonymous with science denial. And when the Iron Curtain came down and Glasnost allowed Western science to begin filtering into the former Soviet Union.
And cheap crony capitalism. And they just basically stole everything from the people and gave it to 12 rich families.
The Soviet scientists were embarrassed of the research they were doing. And they themselves thought, oh, this was pseudoscience. But now with the discovery of epigenetics, Lamarck and Lysenko are getting a second hero.
Okay, just again, there's absolutely no merit to this conversation in the sense that epigenetic code is another really dead old code. It just doesn't do any substantial evolution because of the fact that it is structural. It's the structure of the molecule of the egg. It's tied to. All right. It's so. It's just wrong. All it does is create more error code. So all you're really saying is inbreeding is good because it makes more error code. I mean, to me, it's the wrong approach. to advancing something is just to make more mutations. Make better mutations, not just more.
And that's so.
I mean, you might as well just suggest that the new future would be as if all men had their testicles irradiated, just to ensure, once a week. So just to ensure more mutations, more birth defects, because in the end, that somehow is going to work.
Research is being dusted off and re-examined as we speak. Now, I find it very interesting that given how many of the predictions of neo-Darwinism have been proven incorrect, and
I don't understand. Somebody made predictions based on neo-Darwin. They predicted based on the theory of evolution. They predicted something. Amazing. I predicted that there's no flying alligators, and there haven't been any yet.
cracks of the facade began appearing a long time ago. You can look at Lynn Margulis's discovery of symbiogenesis, symbiotic cooperation between separate organisms, causing them to co-evolve together rather than
more crap. It's just parasites. Two parasites conforming themselves to each other for convenience. Nothing incredible about that. Just two things saying they're going to rape each other, and and so they decide, in a sense, that it's much better if you just let me do the raping and I don't have to do the pull your fur out and all that kind of crap. So let's just make this whole process more efficient, because I'm going to rape you and the other guy's saying yes and I'm going to rape you, and so you're just trying to find a way to rape each other that's more convenient. You're doing less damage. I'm just saying it's like peacocks. They only fight this much. They don't fight to the death. They fight this much, and that's all they need to. They've reduced the bloodshed to, I'm going to pull a couple of feathers out of your ass, and then the chicks will love me and hate you. So a lot of species have turned the combat into something more civilized, just to reduce the fact that it doesn't do any one of them as teams any good if they're killing each other's players, because they still have to go to the World Series. You know what I mean? In the playoff, if you sacrifice your best players and they all get beat up and brutalized and they're out of the game, you're not going to be able to win in the long run, are you? No, you have to kind of preserve your players as best you can. It's to your advantage. So if you can do your rape and pillaging and you don't have to get all scarred up and banged up and shot at, then that's how you're going to do it. Duh.
Evolution being strictly individual selection of random mutations being passed on when they confer.
Yes, it is just individual. Just bullshit to say that somehow they're interspeciesing the genetic code of the two species are mixing, or no, bullshit.
And this has become mainstream science. You can open any biology textbook.
I'm sorry, it's bull fucking shit. Talk to the fucking Christian science. Some Christian is telling us what's real science. Yeah, just more lies from your side.
And read about mitochondrial DNA. That's all the legacy of Lynn Margulis's discovery of symbiogenesis, which was derided and ridiculed as pseudoscience.
Yeah, it's garbage, junk, shit, trash, useless garbage, shit, trash. Yes, nonsense.
Inspired by the neo-Darwinists when she first proposed her theories in the 1970s. Given how many of these predictions have proved false.
Again, what prediction again? Oh, fuck. Oh, they predicted that there wouldn't be fairy godmother DNA transfers between organisms, and you somehow says there is, when there really is no evidence that any of that shit is happening. Just shit talking.
Why is this still scripture? Why does the selfish gene still cast such a long shadow over the collective?
Because you haven't dented a single fact concerning its truthness, and your alternative theory is wacky, silly crap. let's all go to the Holy Ghost house for, you know, and have a boring supper where nobody says anything because they're afraid they're going to go to hell.
Unconsciousness of Western society. Because after all, the Bible only had to make a few mistakes, and we threw Christianity out the window, right?
I'm sorry, no, most of you lunatics of the idiocracy are thriving, you know, in your squalor and your puke. The shitty lying world that exists is made of you assholes.
The world is really 6,000 years old.
The Christians voted for Trump, idiot. The preposterously, insanely, you know, he just says, I mean, every sentence contains a lie. Every one.
This is all bullshit. There's no such thing as God.
There's no such thing as a shred of rationally discernible evidence for the existence of an intelligent creator. There's absolutely nothing. I can't find it in the fiber of this paper. I can't find it in any mechanism. I can't find a single piece of evidence that says God was here. Not a single fucking piece.
But we're much more tolerant of neo-Darwinism. They're allowed all these fuck-ups.
I mean, he hasn't even sat on a Xerox machine, you know? I mean, Xerox machines just so, oh, there's God's ass. It's amazing. Nothing. He has done nothing. He hasn't dripped a teardrop on us.
And it's still it's still de rigueur. It's still gospel. It's still canon. It's what we all have to believe.
Well, you're the nuts with the you have to believe crap, but anyway. Yeah, I have to have a reason to believe. Sorry, oh, that's too high a standard. You have to have a reason to believe. You don't have a reason. You can't provide me a reason. Not a single shred of rational reason why I should think there's any positive outcome to come through belief in this crappy, stupid theory of your talking bear.
I think it's time to take a more nuanced view of nature. I think
phantasmagorical fairy dust bullshit. Let's just pretend that the octopus doesn't have 3,000 eggs and that the little baby octopuses are just as sentient and formed and real and functional as an adult octopus, completely alive in every sense. And 2,999 of them will be brutally killed in the next, 4 months.
the materialism has exacted a heavy toll.
Let's just talk about human beings, right? And evolution, right? I mean, obviously women are made to have way too many kids. So what's your theory? Why did God make women capable of having way more than 2 kids each? Way more. Now, why did he do that? Why does he make them fertile at 12 years old? Why does he do that exactly? Why don't you give me your explanation for the great wisdom in 12-year-olds having babies?
Society, on Western culture. And I'm not suggesting self-delusion for the greater good. I would never suggest...
You're suggesting mass delusion for the greater good. Complete mass fucktarda. Let's go further down the idiocracy rabbit hole. God damn. Amazing. I'm not suggesting you all become idiots. Yes, you are.
A platonic, noble lie.
It's not, if it was noble, I wouldn't be making this video. If there was something to say, oh, it really is the good deed, the good man, the great integrity choice. No, we see what it is. It's the sword of the capitalist whore. It's the sword of the bigot. It's Christianity. Your religion is just a weapon being used by people who couldn't give a fucking shit who Jesus the fuck Christ was. They don't even bother reading his stupid fucking idiotic philosophy anyway. The poor will be with you always. I'm but here for a short while. He was an idiot.
What I am suggesting is that just because something's very ugly doesn't mean it's the ugly truth.
La 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 la. Just because something's ugly doesn't mean it's ugly. Yeah, it does.
I think that the reason so many people are compelled or predisposed to believe in a materialist worldview is because it's so fucked up and because it sounds so scary. There's so...
Again, just more nonsense. No, there's no desire or what possible advantage does one have in recognizing all of this waste and hardship and having to accept it? What fun is there in accepting the death of your loved ones, your pets, tragedy, horrible stuff? What fun is there in any of that?
This rationale, but it must be true. This is too depressing not to be true. But I'm not so sure about that. And I would like...
So again, he's just saying it's all for the best somehow because, whatever. I just, the amazing atheist, you can sort of understand, okay, he's a sadomasochist. He's got all kinds of perverse notions of what pain and pleasure is, and maybe he doesn't know what... Maybe he can't make it. Maybe he really can't make a distinction between something enjoyable and something horrible. And I guess fake Sagan has the same sort of bent. He just really can't tell the difference.
To point out that at no time in this video have I fallen back on concepts from quantum physics. I haven't.
And if you go ahead, that's even more laughable. So go ahead and reach for one of those. Like God invented entangled particles. Now that'd be a whole subject. Oh, okay, so he entangles particles, but he won't tell us how to make penicillin. I don't know. Whatever. Phantasmagorical, silly crap.
Said anything about non-locality or the observer effect or quantum entanglement, because I know quantum physics is like the new Pythagorean mystery cult, and unless you're a CERN worker, you're not allowed to talk about it at all, because, the public just misunderstands and construes everything as a pseudoscience. And, I wouldn't want to be accused of being Deepak Chopra, right? Right. Only...
Well, it seems desperate that you religious kooks would start going to the religion of quantum mechanics, another, just a fairy tale religion where they got rid of the God, but they still have the holiness. There's just the holy robe. There's no God in it. And you're so desperate to find some sort of integrity for your silly, wacky fable that you have to go to the people who are also Three Bear story writers. Just that they took the bear out of its fur. There's no bear, there's just the fur suit.
A credentialed physicist is allowed to acknowledge that the quantum world even exists at all. That's not for you, Mr. Layman. You're not allowed to talk about that or think about it or acknowledge it. So
yeah, you're not allowed to because there's no evidence for any of this crap. The evidence is this, you could write all the hard evidence on the surface of this pen. They got shit for evidence. It's all a story. Silly stories.
I won't. I am not bringing that up in this video, and I want to be given the credit for the fact that I'm not bringing that up. Don't make that up.
Except for bringing it up and sort of implying something like, oh yeah, I had lots of more arguments for why there's a God. I could have used all this quantum argument. Yeah, I could have done that, but I didn't do that. So don't act like I resorted to quantum magic. Yeah, the third wave of religion, physics. Ugh, it really is. It's just so bad.
Arguing against me. There's no quantum rationale going on here. 32 minutes and 45 seconds. It looks like I'm running short on time. Guys, click the fucking links in the video description down below. Don't skim them. Hit that black triangle, expand the video description, click the motherfucking links. Click the damn links. Peace out.
I don't know why he had some sort of time issue. Whatever. Oh, they're not even, there's no, men of education with British accents.
Artificial
that's annoying. I don't know why it's playing a motherfucking video that I didn't click on. So bad. So this is a TED video. I mean, that's just, YouTube is so rude.
The late great Werner Heisenberg.
Yeah, who cares? Let's see, I wanted to make a point about being suited to communist society. Always, it's just so stuck with this straw man bullshit. Just pitiful. I mean, so overtly straw man arguments. Well, let's click on one of these just to see what this shit is. But I hate links that don't say, what the fuck is this shit? Why don't you tell me what this shit is?
An inheritance, that is discrete inheritance, with evolutionary theory, and about the same time too, Weizmann established what was called the Weizmann barrier, the idea that the germ cells and their genetic material is not in any way influenced by the organism itself or by the environment. And then, something like 40 years later, a variety of people, Julian Huxley, R.A. Fisher, Haldane and Wright, put things together to call it the modern synthesis. So what exactly is the modern synthesis? It's sometimes called neo-Darwinism.
Oh, whatever.
There's thousands of references on this in his website. It
Our
is difficult, if not
mutations
impossible,
random.
to find a genome change operator that is truly random in its action within the DNA of the cell. All careful studies of
Yeah, well, the random is a bogus word anyway, but it's close enough to random. You're certainly not going to be able to follow any trend. Why don't you demonstrate? Again, it's not that hard, Mr. Scientist. If you're going to want to prove something, then just make 1,000 of them and show how there's a statistical irregularity that can't be explained as within the realm of chance and randomness. Why don't you show something that's unrandom, where God's little finger twitched? Ugh, what a pile of crap. Anyway. Ugh, so depressing. So depressing.
So to give you an indication,
Another.
if this were one complete wave...
Shut up. More crap. Physics. Religion. So what am I looking for? So anyway, preposterously long video, but yeah, it's good to have once in a while. See, how long is it? 1 hour and 43. Well, it's not that bad. I mean, very few people died and all that. So yeah, is there anything to say? I mean, it's an important subject that I keep trying to emphasize in a way. This idea of evolution. I mean, it is critically important to understanding what we are as robots, why we fight so desperately, why we're so ego sensitive, so paranoid about the value equation. We can't even admit that there might be a problem with this game in some way because it's our vanity. We're too afraid to admit that we're part of something that sucks. And all of that can be understood by understanding evolution. But people don't give a shit, so it doesn't matter. They're just doing their fucking chase. and they're materialist in the other sense. They're just a bunch of fake Christians who entirely reject everything Jesus talked about, and then pretend they're his followers. I mean, it's hilarious hypocrisy. All right, so that's enough. So yes, till the next time. Hopefully this recorded properly, and I will not need to do this over again, and such, so forth and whatnot.